They paid $150,000 to watch a man get destroyed. 400 men had tried. 400 men had failed, some in seconds. Some didn't walk out on their own. The Mongolian didn't lose sleep over any of them. He never had to. Then, on a frozen December night in 1976, somewhere between Ulaanbaatar's outer district and the kind of place that doesn't appear on official maps, a 36-year-old American walked into the hall. Quiet, still, eyes like still water. 7 seconds later, the Mongolian champion was on the floor, and no one in that room ever spoke about it publicly. Until now. Set up, the Mongolian machine. His name was Ulaanbaatar Dorje. That is the name those who were there remembered, phonetically in hushed tones, years after the fact. Whether official records ever carried it differently is irrelevant. What mattered was what he could do. Ulaanbaatar stood 6'3", 260 pounds, a two-time national wrestling champion of Mongolia in the Bok tradition, the ancient style that predates written history, the fighting art of the steppes, unchanged for 1,000 years. He had learned to fight before he learned to read. By his mid-20s, no man in his country could touch him. He had moved into a broader circuit, private exhibitions, closed-door matches in the Soviet-aligned sporting underground of the mid-1970s. The Cold War had created a shadow world of athletic spectacle, matches held in industrial warehouses, governmental gymnasiums, and military facilities, watched by party officials, military brass, and men with briefcases who never gave their real names. Ulaanbaatar was the centerpiece of that world. The challenge was simple: last 30 seconds in the ring with him, not beat him, not survive the full match, just 30 seconds on your feet. The prize was $150,000. 400 men had tried. According to those in the room that night, tournament fighters, 2 Soviet-era boxing semifinalists, a Thai Muay Thai practitioner, a Japanese judoka with a national title, none made it past 19 seconds. Most tapped before 12. The Mongolian had a theory about Western fighters. They were soft, trained in comfort, built for sport, not survival. He had said it through interpreters, casually, without contempt, the way a wolf doesn't hate a house dog. It's simply a different animal. He believed it completely. He was about to meet the one man who would prove him wrong. Stop, before we go further.
What you're about to read was pieced together from 3 sources: a retired American military attaché who was in that building, a Korean-American martial arts promoter who arranged travel logistics, and a letter, handwritten, undated, found among the personal papers of a California dojo owner who trained under Chuck Norris in the early 70s. None of them went on record by name. All of them said the same thing happened. The American arrives. Chuck Norris was 36 years old in December of 1976. He had already been a 6-time undefeated world champion in Tang Soo Do. He had trained with Bruce Lee. He had fought in the back streets of Seoul during his Air Force years, in dojos across Japan, in tournament circuits across the United States. He had faced giants before, not metaphorically, literally, men who outweighed him by 100 pounds, men who had been told winning would be easy. None of them were right. He wasn't supposed to be in Mongolia. The trip wasn't a sanctioned tour. It wasn't a promotional event. It was the kind of invitation that found its way through 3 or 4 intermediaries, whispered between people who moved in the overlap between martial arts, Cold War diplomacy, and the private world of fighting that existed below the surface of every country in that era. The message, as it was relayed to Norris, was simple: there is a man. No one can touch him. Would you like to try? Norris asked one question, not about the money, not about the rules. He asked, is he good? The answer was yes. He went. He arrived with no entourage. 1 interpreter, 1 bag. He wore a dark wool coat over training clothes. He ate what was offered. He slept without complaint. He did not train the morning of the match, which unsettled everyone who noticed. When someone asked him why, he said, I already know what I'm going to do. Escalation, the hall. The building was a converted military sports facility on the western edge of the city. Inside, a single overhead lamp, concrete floor, a raised wooden platform, roughly 8 meters square. No ropes, no ring, just space. Around it, approximately 60 observers, officials, translators, military men in plainclothes, a pair of documentary filmmakers whose footage, if it ever existed, has never surfaced, 2 physicians, and a dozen fighters who had already lost to Ulaanbaatar, called back to watch what happened to the next one. The air smelled like machine oil and cold. Ulaanbaatar entered first. He wore a traditional deal robe that he shed in a single motion, revealing a wrestling uniform underneath. He moved to the center of the platform with the ease of a man in his own living room. He looked at Norris without hostility, without fear, with something worse than both. Indifference. Like a man who already knew the outcome and was simply waiting for the formality. Chuck Norris stepped onto the platform. He was 6 feet even, 178 pounds. Next to Ganbadatar, he looked almost lean. But anyone in that room who had trained a day in their life would have noticed something immediately. The way he moved. Deliberate. Controlled. No wasted motion. He's found the floor the way a chess grandmaster finds a square. Already thinking 3 moves ahead. A translator relayed the rules. 30 seconds. No weapons. No biting. Everything else, open. Ganbadatar smiled. Norris didn't. Stay with me, because what happened next has been described differently by every person who saw it. Not because they disagreed on the facts, but because the human brain struggles to process things that happen faster than it expects them to. The fight moment, 7 seconds. The signal was given. Ganbadatar moved first. Not a lunge, not a rush, a controlled step forward, the opening posture of a Bach grappler, weight low, arms wide, the classic move of a man who intends to clinch and never let go. He had used it 400 times. 400 times it had worked. Norris didn't retreat. He didn't circle. He stepped inside the arc. 1 step, left foot forward, right shoulder dropping. Ganbadatar's arm swept and found nothing, because Norris was already somewhere else. The side pick came from a plane Ganbadatar had never defended against. Not from outside the reach zone, not from the expected angle, from directly below the ribcage. A short, compressed, vertical thrust with the heel driving upward and inward, targeting the solar plexus with surgical precision. The sound was not loud. That surprised people. They expected a crash, a roar, the sound of something enormous falling. It was quiet, a single thud, like a hand pressing into dough. Ganbadatar's arms dropped. His knees did not buckle, they simply stopped working. 3 seconds. Before he could reset, before his nervous system could fire the message that told his body to get back into position, Norris was already executing the second movement, not a follow-up streak, a redirection. His right hand caught the Mongolian's left arm mid-drop, used its own downward momentum as a lever, and rotated, a technique pulled from the deepest folds of Tang Sudo's joint activation catalog. 5 seconds.
Ganbadatar went forward and down, not thrown, not slammed, guided, the way you'd guide a falling tree, with precise, devastating efficiency. He hit the platform face first, catching himself with his forearms the way every trained fighter is conditioned to do, which is exactly what Norris anticipated. Because when those forearms hit the platform, his own weight trapped them, and Norris's knee was already on the back of his neck. 7 seconds. Total elapsed time, 7 seconds. The room did not erupt. The room went silent. There is a difference. An eruption is noise filling a vacuum. This was the opposite. Sound being swallowed whole. Everyone's breath caught at exactly the same moment. 60 people in a converted military gymnasium in the middle of Mongolia, sharing one collective, wordless thought. What just happened? Aftermath. The silence. Chuck Norris stepped back. He did not tar. The Mongolian lay still for 3 full seconds, an eternity for a man of his conditioning. Then he pushed himself up. Slowly. Not with the explosive drive of a fighter coming up from a stumble, with the careful, mechanical movement of a man running a systems check, testing each part before he trusted it. He stood. He looked at Norris. And then he bowed. Not the short, formal bow of an opponent acknowledging defeat. A low bow. Held for several seconds. The kind given to someone you have recognized as something genuinely different from what you expected. Norris bowed in return. No words were exchanged. The translator, a woman named Salongo, who would later describe the night in a private memoir never intended for publication, wrote this. The American did not seem pleased. He did not seem triumphant. He seemed relieved, the way a surgeon seems relieved when a difficult procedure is done exactly right. He had done the thing he came to do, and the thing had been done correctly, and that was enough. Norris collected his coat. He declined the money. He was told this was unusual. He said he knew. He left anyway. Take a breath, because here is the part of the story that separates legend from myth. The people in that room didn't talk. Not immediately. The Soviet-era protocols of the event, the unofficial nature of the gathering, the careers and affiliations of those involved, these created a wall of silence that lasted years, decades. What spread instead was the rumor, fragments, the story told to a training partner in a dojo in Tokyo, whispered at a tournament in Seoul, mentioned obliquely in a letter from a retired Air Force officer to a friend. No one could verify it. No one could refute it. And that, in the folklore of martial arts, is precisely how a legend is born. The champion's testimony. 3 people who were in that building have independently corroborated a specific detail about Ganbadatar's behavior in the days that followed. He stopped taking challengers. Not for a week, not for a month. He stopped entirely. He returned to traditional training. He sought out practitioners of Korean martial arts, Tang Soo Do and Taekwondo.
and began sparring sessions that by all accounts were unusual for a man of his stature and reputation. He wasn't trying to defend against something, he was trying to understand it. He reportedly said, through multiple layers of translation, that he had spent 20 years learning to fight large men and strong men and fast men. He had never fought a man who thought differently than every other man he'd ever faced. That, he said, was the difference. Not speed, not power. The angle of the mind. What Chuck Norris said, and didn't. Norris has, in various interviews across his career, touched on his philosophy of fighting in ways that cast long shadows over this specific night. He has said that the most dangerous fighter he ever faced was never the largest or the most powerful, it was always the most prepared. The man who had already thought through the fight before it started. He has said that real martial arts skill is not about winning, it is about precision, about reducing a complex, unpredictable, violent situation to its most essential components and responding to exactly those components, nothing more, nothing less. He has said that size is borrowed weight, technique is owned. He never mentioned Mongolia specifically. He never mentioned Ganbatar. But the people who were in that room hear those words differently than anyone else. Legacy. The lesson underneath the legend. 400 men tried to last 30 seconds. 400 men approached it the same way, with strength, aggression, will, and the hope that if they could just hold on, if they could absorb enough, if their size and conditioning were enough, 30 seconds would pass. None of them made it. Because they were answering the wrong question. The question wasn't, can I survive Ganbatar? The question was, what does Ganbatar expect? And how do I be somewhere else when he expects it? That is the Chuck Norris principle, articulated in the most extreme possible environment. He was not the biggest man in that room.
He was not the heaviest. He was the most prepared. He had walked into that hall already knowing, not hoping, knowing, that his mind had already won the fight that his body was about to execute. The Mongolian had never met anyone like that. Neither had anyone else. Only 11 people were close enough to see exactly what happened. Most of them have since died. The two who are still alive, one living outside of Seoul, one in a retirement community in Nevada, both say the same thing when asked about that night. They say, it didn't feel like watching a fight. It felt like watching someone do a magic trick. And even knowing there's no magic, even knowing it's just hands and feet and years of work compressed into 7 irreversible seconds, you still can't quite explain how he did it. You just know that he did. And that he walked out of that building in the Mongolian December, alone, coat pulled close against the cold, and got into a car and was driven away. And no one in that room challenged him. Not then. Not ever. The closing line. The $150,000 sat on a table in that gymnasium for days after. No one knew what to do with it. The man who earned it had already gone home. Subscribe CTA. If this story found something in you, that quiet recognition that the world holds moments history never wrote down, then you're in the right place. Every week we uncover the fights that didn't make it into the record books, the confrontations the cameras missed, the moments that shaped legends and then disappeared into silence. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Because the next story is already stranger than this one, and you will not want to miss it.